How can journalists restore trust? Grosser 2016 stated more and more people are turning to online journalism in today's digital age, and hence trust in online journalism is increasingly important. But journalism is letting the public down in grave ways. Trust is becoming something that is disappearing between the public and journalists. It's an important part of journalism. Trust dictates what the public is willing to hear or listen to. If there is no trust, eventually there is no real journalism, and no one to report the truth to the public. With more journalists dispersed across traditional and digital media, today it's harder than ever for journalists to gain trust. With so much news and information constantly being diversified, it can be hard to build trust and easier to lose it. In many cases, one journalist's bad reporting can come to represent that journalism is untrustworthy and not to be read or listened to. In other words, online bad reporting is much more evident and is something that people can rip apart, debate and get angry over. Bad journalism is constantly in the limelight online, whereas good journalism goes undetected, as it does not wow the audience or cause heated debate. This is where trust is lost. The public quickly loses respect for bad journalism, and as most of the examples that are currently brought to the limelight are bad journalism, the public can find it hard to rely trust into journalists. And journalists fulfilling their role correctly feel the futile fight to maintain good journalism to the public because it goes unclick and fades away into the void of the internet. The scales are not equal in journalism and trust. Trust is outweighed by things like readership, competition, views, clicks, and profit. The futility for good journalists to do their job well is lost in this, and the public loses trust as a result. Journalists should be called out for their current priorities, as it allows them to remember how important public trust is. But the question should be asked, would such mistakes occur without the urgency placed on journalism to report first, with the idea that it's better to be first and get a story out there than fact-check and publish when the story is 100% correct? Many journalists have to resort to clickbait and sensationalized titles to get the readership they need to function and the viewership to be a business. Journalists' role now prioritize so many things before they consider the importance of trust. Every day we see different headlines. These are the Boston Marathon bombers. Cases of misinformation, for example, the Boston Marathon bombers, is a prime example of why mistrust exists. Labeling incorrect people as terrorists and circulating information to a wide audience, journalism lost a lot of trust from this in these mistakes viewed by the public. Clickbait also plays an important role here, misleading titles, sensationalizing or over-exaggerating the truth, just so people click on the article. 10 things Trump said about North Korea. Research has found turnips cause cancer. At some point, the public switches off to all news, whether it is relevant or irrelevant, as they have no trust of what journalists are doing. Important news is glossed over by people seeing baseless news written by journalists and people calling themselves journalists. It's important that not all news online is written by professionals, but a lot is. The public should be able to determine which outlets are run by actual journalists, but the lines are blurred. Statista in 2017 uncovered the levels of trust in media in countries worldwide. Brazil 60%, Germany 50%, Canada 49%, Mexico 49%, Japan 43%, United Kingdom 43%, Hong Kong 42%, Switzerland 46%, Singapore 42%, United States 38%, Australia 42%. These statistics are low. When less than 50% of a population has distrust in the media, there is an issue that is evident in journalism today. So why does the public distrust journalists? Why is there so much distrust? The main reasons are mistrust of fake news, misinformation, oversaturation of news, incorrect reporting, poor journalistic practice, competition, and social media, which come from both trained journalists and untrained journalists. Journalists now more than ever feel the pressure to keep up with so many forms of media, report the news, and maintain relevance. In the essence of this, real journalism is lost. Misinformation occurs, fake news, bad journalism, and journalistic integrity is lost. The public switches off to important news as they are bombarded with too much conflicting information. Reporting goes bad, journalistic practice and ethics are lost. But the reality is, a world where journalists have prioritized clicks, views, likes, and the first to report is a world where journalists will continue to have a bad relationship with the public and public trust. So how can journalists restore trust? They need to be better. They need to report the truth. They need to give the public reasons to give trust. Move away from bad internet behaviour like clickbait, misleading titles. Be watchdogs, fulfill the true role of journalists, remembering duty to journalism and their duty to the public. Journalists need to get back to the core of their jobs. Journalism isn't there to be the first to report. It's about being the ones to report factually and accurately. to report the truth and facts to the public in a manner that is accessible to a big audience. It's not the role of the public to be more trustworthy. Journalists need to take critical action if their role is to be taken seriously in years to come. Journalists are in a pivotal point where they could potentially lose the public trust forever. People need the news, and that will never change, but what will change is where people go to find it. People will turn to the reputable and trusted sources, which is where the good journalists will be. Journalists can restore trust. They need to behave in such ways which demand trust and in which they deserve to be trusted. And instead of these actions, the public will restore their trust in journalists and in the media.